نحمده ونصلي على رسوله الكريم أما بعد فأعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Hello and assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu to all the viewers and dear students of Salam University. I would like to welcome you once again to another session on the subject of business law. This is going to be our 16th lecture. I'm Safiullah Shinwari, one of the lecturers of Salam University, Faculty of Economics. I hope students and viewers, all of you are fine in having healthy and good days. So let's go on and see. So these are the two topics that we have already discussed in our previous lecture. We have talked about, the breach of contract in detail. So let me shortly remind you that actually breach of contract means a violation of law. Because whenever one party breaks the contract, that's called breach of contract. So when one party breaks the contract and he or she refuses to perform the liabilities in the responsibilities of the contract, so this is called breach of contract. यानी ज़माने के तबायनी दो parties contract में शा و اردو پارتی نظر به کانترکت که از بعضی مسئولیت ها و مکلفیت ها را در مقابل یکدیگر باید پورا کنند. یعنی کانترکت که از در بینشان بعضی مکلفیت ها و مسئولیت ها را که از ایجاد میکنه. دیگه زمانی که یک پارتی او را ریجکت میکنه، ریفیوز میکنه to perform the contract, this is called breach of contract. So normally whenever the breach of contract happens, so in that one party is like getting benefits, because breach of contract happens for benefits. यानी एक party फिक्र में करना कि the breach of contract is faydatious, but on the other side the other party is going to be hurt, and the injured party will definitely suffer some loss, and the injured party has the right to claim or turn to law and ask for remedies. यानी ई हक़ कदम पार्टी के او از breach of contract برش مشکل پیدا میشه یا نقصان مالی برش پیدا میشه، او حق داره که ادعای قانونی کنه و به خاطر remedies یا compensation کس demand کنه. So remedies for breach of contract همین معنا را داره که کدام پارتی که کانترکت بریچ کرده و حالا باید remedies بده با جانب مقابل خود. دیگه این موضوعات بود که ما در لکچر 15 خود تدریس کرده بودیم. احیانا اگر شما مس کردین you can go back to my YouTube channel and study lecture number 15. You will have the better view of these two topics. Coming to the topics which are going to be explained around this lecture, we're going to talk about contract of sale of goods, and we're going to also discuss the essentials of contract of sales of goods. So let's first talk about contract of sale of goods. So contract of sale of goods is also a type of contract which happens between two contracting parties, in which one party is the seller and the other party is the buyer. So in this type of contract, the seller is going to agree and takes the responsibility to transfer the goods to the agreed place and also to the agreed person. It means to whom the contract has been made. یعنی contract of goods sale of goods عبارت از باشه که زمانی که بین دو پارتیز کانترکت میشه، قرارداد میشه، یک پارتی فروشنده می باشه و دیگه پارتی که از او میخره. دیگه بین ازیا که از قرارداد میشه که کسی که میفروشه ای باید جنس رایی کنه یا ارسال کنه به اون موقعیتی که امرای بایر پرومیس شده، وعده شده. This is called contract of sale of goods. So based on section number 4.1 of the Sale of Goods Act defines a contract of sale of goods as a contract whereby the seller transfers or agrees to transfer the property in goods to buyer for a price. In other words, a contract to transfer the ownership of goods from the seller to the buyer for a price is known as contract of sale of goods. یعنی در اینجا دو چیز خو فعلا برای ما شما واضح میشه که در contract of sale of goods این موضوع مهم است که از یا سیلر که است او مسئولیت داره که او جنس ارسال کنه و بایر مسئولیت داره که او price average باید pay کنه و یه جنس که ارسال میشه یا on the spot د اونم وقت ارسال میشه و یا ایستن که اگری میکنه که د کدام later date او را باید ارسال کنه. So let's see one of the example which will make it more clear for us. A is seller and B is buyer. So there is a contract between A and B, and they are the contracting parties. So one is the seller and the other one is the buyer. So they are going to constitute or they're going to form a contract of sale. The seller must either transfer or agree to transfer. So قبلا ما براتون گفتم که یا خو on the spot either transfer میکنه یا agree to transfer, you know, on a later date the property or ownership. It means there is another point. Whenever you sell a property to someone, so the ownership is going to be shifted from you to that person in the goods to the buyer. Example, A sells his car to B. So now, you know, A is the seller and B is the buyer, and car is the good of contract between them. It means they're going to contract on car. So the price is mentioned. The ownership and possession of the car will be transferred from A to B. دیگه در اینجا مسئولیت A است که موتر باید به B ارسال کنه و ownership ازی که است باید به B shift شوه. لیکن B در مقابل A مسئولیت داره که پرایز ذکر شده زورا که است او را باید برشان پرداخت کنه. So this was the example. I hope you understand now the contract of sale of goods. Before we go on to discuss the essentials of contract of sale of goods, so let's first talk about goods. Actually, good means every kind of movable property other than illegal claims in money. یعنی تمامی او property که او قابل زیباشه که از یک جای به جای دیگه انتقال شوه, we call them goods. لیکن او illegal claims باید نباشه یا پیسه نباشه. It includes electricity از قبیل برق باشه, water آب باشه, gas, stock and shares, growing crops, grass and things attached to or forming part of the land which are agreed to be separated before sale or under the contract of sale. So these mentioned elements and items can be included in the category of goods because they are transferable و ایستن که قابل جدا شدن هستن و یا قابل ترانسفر می باشه. Now let's discuss the essentials of contract of sales of goods. So there are some significant points which should be considered and taken into account while forming any contract of sale of goods. So the first, that is the contract or agreement. We have already made it quite clear in our first few lectures that the difference between contract and agreement. Like a legal agreement can be a contract because there were two types of agreements, social agreement and legal agreement. So legal agreement can be called a contract, but social agreement cannot be included in the category of a contract. Two parties, this is another essential of forming a contract of sales of goods. यानी भाई दो parties मौजूद बाशा, दो जानिबाइन मौजूद बाशा. Third is transfer of property. دیگه इस शर्त باید هم موجود باشه که property یا on the spot transfer میشه یا ایستن که agree میشه و بعداً transfer میشه. Goods باید موجود باشه, جنس باید موجود باشه. Price is another essentials of contract of sales of goods. Sale in agreement of sale موجود باید شه. Other formalities دیگه کدام رسمیاتی که ضرورت است او باید شامل ای essentials of contract of sales of goods باید باشه. این نکات باید مد نظر گرفته شود زمانی که یک contract of sales of goods ایجاد میشه در بین جانبین. So let's discuss all those 7 essentials with examples to make it more specific and clear for understanding. The first one, that's contract in agreement. The word contract means an agreement enforceable by law. It means whenever we form a legal agreement with a party, so that legal agreement is going to be forced by law. In case if one party is going to breach or one party rejects to act upon the contract, so the other party can have the right to go, and enforce the contract in the light of law. So all the essentials of a valid contract, like capacity of parties, free consent, legality of the object, should be present in a contract. So these were the points that we've explained, in our previous lectures, that the parties, they must have, capacity to the contract. یعنی parties باید ظرفیتی را داشته باشه که قرارداد ایجاد کنه. که اونجا ما شما سر ماینر صحبت کرده بودیم که کسایی که ماینرز باشه, it means they haven't completed or they haven't attained their legal age, so they cannot form any type of contract. The people who are unsound mind, so they do not have the capacity to contract. And there were some other, occasions in which some of the people, they were restricted from forming any type of contract. دیگه free consent بود یوم یک شرط از the contract که رضایت جانبین باید موجود باشه و این free consent که است این باید به فریب به دست نبیایه. legality of the object, بالای کدام پوینت یا بالای کدام جنس که جانبین میخواه قرارداد کنه او باید legal باشه, کدام illegal object یا جنس نباشه. این نقاط دیگه باید the contract of sale هم موجود باشه. It may be verbal or in writing. It may be expressed or implied. دیگه ای باز اقسام هستن که جانبین موافقه میکنه که را verbal یعنی شفایی با یک دیگه میگه و کانترکت میکنه یا در رایتینگ میکنه یا او را express میکنه the words خود یا implied می باشه که از actions برای ما معلوم میشه که بین از یا کانترکت صورت گرفته. But we always say that it's better to put the contract in writing form because that will give us more like a legal power in order to enforce the contract in case if the other party is going to reject to act upon the contract. So there is an example. A sells his computer to B for 40,000. So A is the seller and B is the buyer. So if you see in this example, so there is computer, which is a legal object, and A is going to shift the ownership of computer to B, and B has the responsibility and liability to pay the price which is agreed upon. So both the parties, they must have capacity of the contract, and also A should get the consent of B, not by misrepresenting or not by fraud. دیگه در بین زیاد باید موافقه صورت بگیره و they can enter into a sale of goods. It's a type of contract. The second essentials of contract of sales of good is the two parties. یعنی دو جانبین باید موجود باشه. There must be two parties to a contract of sale, a buyer and a seller. So normally these are the two people who are forming a contract of sales of goods. One person cannot act a buyer and seller. یعنی یک نفر در یک وقت نمیتونه که هم بایر باشه و هم seller باشه, because a person cannot buy his own goods and similarly a person cannot sell his goods to himself. یعنی logically درست نمیآید که یک نفر اجناس خود سر خود بفروشه. However, an owner of the one part can sell his shares to the owner of the other part. این امکان داره. For example, two brothers, they are sharing a property and they have shares. So one brother is going to sell his part to his another brother. So then it's possible. Similarly, a partner may buy the goods from the firm in which he is a partner and vice versa. خلاص ای که یک نفر جنس خود سر خود فروخته نمیتونه. ضرور است که یک پارتی دیگه هم رش موجود باشه تا که از او جنس بگیره یا بفروشه. یعنی یکیش بایر شوه و دیگهش seller شوه. See the example in the down part. A and B jointly own a car. A و B که هستن یک موتر داره و مشترک خریده. A sells his share to B. B will become sole owner of the car. دیگه حالا در یک وقت که هست مثال A میخواه که همو حصه خود که هست سر B بفروشه. زمانی که در بین جا موافقه صورت میگیره و B او را میخره تمام ownership که هست او از A shift میشه به B. Now B is the only responsible and the only owner of the car. The third essential, that's the transfer of property. کدام ملکیتی که یا بالایشان قرارداد کرده که او باید از A به B بره، یعنی از سلر به بایر بره، او باید ترانسفر شوه. کسی که مسئولیتش داره او باید ایرا ترانسفر کنه. Transfer of property is another essential of contract of sale. Property here means ownership. So it means, the thing you are going to sell, so you should shift the ownership of that to the one that you sold. A mere transfer of possession of the goods cannot be termed as sale. To constitute, to make and form a contract, so you need to transfer the complete property to the buyer. And transferring the property, it can have in two forms. First, you can transfer it on the spot, and second, you can transfer it on a later day or on a later date. So it depends on the buyer and seller, how do they agree. See the example. A sells his car to B. So now there is a contract between A and B. So the price is agreed upon, 5 lakh. So now the ownership in the possession of the car will transfer from A to B. ملکیت کار که است او به B میره و B باید در مقابل که است پرایز پرداخت کنه. The fourth one, that's goods. جنس باید موجود باشه. The subject matter of the contract of sale must be goods. یعنی بالای چیزی که یا قرارداد میکنه و باید یک جنس باشه و باید معلوم باشه و legal باشه. According to the section 2.7, goods means every kind of movable property. As we discussed before, that it can be electricity, gas, like water, like other movable properties like land. So you may say that how the land is going to be moved. Yeah, actually we can have price for that. So mountains in CADC, every movable property is regarded as goods. The trees, fruit are regarded as goods because they can be separated from land. See the example. A sells his car to M for 3 lakh. It's a contract of sale because here the subject matter, car is movable thing. ما میتونیم که ownershipش از یک نفر به دیگر نفر move کنیم. The fifth essential, that's price, which is the most important, because whenever the seller is going to shift the ownership of the object or the good to another person, so in return he is going to receive a price in the form of cash. The consideration in contract of sale must be price. So whenever you are forming any kind of contract, so there should be consideration of two parties. Seller باید بایر مد نظر بگیره و بایر که باید seller مد نظر بگیره و در اینجا consideration هدف از همون جنس و پیسه می باشه. So when goods are sold or exchanged for the other goods, the transaction is barter and not a contract of sale of goods. اینجا باید یک نقطه رو ما مد نظر بگیریم که اگر دو نفر در بین خود قرارداد میکنه و جنس تبدیل میکنه، این باز ما یک ترانزکشن که به نام بارتر یاد میشه، یعنی بارتر سیستم در بزنس موجود بود در سابق که مردم اجناس با دیگرها تبدیل میکردن و هر کس جنس مورد ضرورت خود پیدا میکردن. بازوی ما contract of sale of goods گفته نمیتونیم. The contract of sale of goods که است باید جنس و پیسه موجود باشه. این شرطش است. If goods are sold partly for goods and partly for money, the contract is sale. Example, A sells his laptop to B. So for 20,000, it's a contract of sale. در بین A و B کس یک قرارداد صورت گرفت، یکی کامپیوتر خود فروخت و دیگر کس در مقابل پیسه داد. See next example. X sells his cycle to B against B's promise to give 1 ton of wheat. It's not a contract of sale. X کس او سایکل خود داده به B و B در مقابل گفته که 1 تن گندم برش میته، یعنی جنس به جنس تبدیل کرده. در اینجا ای contract of sales گفته نمیشه چرا که price consideration است و او موجود نیست. So point number 6 in essential number 6, that's sale in agreement of sale. The term contract of sale includes both sale in and agreement to sell. When the property in the goods is transferred from seller to the buyer at the time of formation of the contract is called sold. यानी दो कलिमे की रेंज जिक्र शुदा sell و agreement to sell यकी बेईमान अस्तन कि on the spot sell में शा द वक्त की contract इजाद में शा sell में शा व transfer में शा वही की इस्तन की agreement में कना कि the future को दम date यौमे तनन की उरा sell करो ownership पर transfer कना अजियक नफर पर नफर देगा. Where under a contract of sale, the transfer of ownership in the goods is to be transferred from seller to buyer at some future date. E case was agreement to sell में बोशा. The awal case sell वो बेईमानस कि दो नमुआ case ownership बात shift शवा. लेकिन the agreement to sell case ownership the future the column date या तारीख case सूरा ममितने shift कनेम. The contract is called an agreement to sell. See the examples. A buys a book from S and pays the whole price on a counter. It is a sale. किताब खरीद व दाइन वक्त पैसा रहता ownership case shift शत consideration price वो मद नजर गिरफ्तार शत. लेकिन see the B. A agrees to buy B's car for 2 lakh if his mechanic approves the car. It is an agreement to sell. A में ख़या कि as B मोटर बिगिरा लेकिन अगर mechanic या मिस्त्री उरे एक दफ़ा approve को नबी बिना कि सही है यानी. So this is an agreement to sell कि the future date इमे तना अंजाम दादा शवा. The last in 7th essential of sale of contract is the other formalities. यानी चीज़ाई के मौसर शान बास कर दें उखो शामिल में बोशा वो देगा formalities व रस्मियात के अस उबाद मद नज़र गिरफ्तार शवा कि अक्सरन इस कबिले राइटिंग में बोशा कि ई कॉन्ट्रैक्ट बायत रजिस्टर शवा हमरा एक मर्जी रस्मी के बाद अगर कोदम पार्टी करारदाद फासा में कना ब्रीच में कना ويستن की उसूल करारदादा फॉलो न में कना लेकिन शुमा अगर हमरा मर्जी रस्मी इरा रजिस्टर कदा बशिन in that case you can claim against the party who is breaching the contract. There is no specific procedure to make a contract apart from above. तमाम नुकात के असर on बास शत. All other essentials of a valid contract like capacity of the parties कि सर उज़मोशुमा बास कदें free consenters legality of the object should also be there in a contract of sale. It may be oral or written, but it's better to be in written, and also it should be registered. A verbally promises to sell his car to B. It's a contract of sale. If both the parties are competent to contract and have given their consent freely. देखा दबा ने जो contract सूरत गिरफ्ता. Thank you very much, all viewers and students, for watching. If you have any question, comment, and constructive criticism, so you can inbox me.